Hello, welcome. I'm Pauline from Pauline's Quilters World. And as you can see, we've got a lot of things of Christmas happening here. So we just want to be able to show you a few little things that you can do to get ready for your Christmas coming up very soon. We're going to start with making the jelly roll Christmas tree. So we do have a pattern for this gorgeous tree. It is made out of a jelly roll, or if you don't have a jelly roll in, say, greens, if that's what you want to make your tree out of, you may want to do it out of purples or reds or any colour, because we all know that we set themes of colour for Christmas a lot of the time. But we've actually made ours out of scraps of fabric because we had a lot of green sitting around, so we cut 2.5-inch wide strips. But if you want to go online or go to your local quilt store and buy a green jelly roll, that would be fantastic. But once you've purchased your jelly roll strips or your roll, or you cut your own, as I said, they're 2.5-inch wide strips, we then fill it with the Hobbs Heirloom double-sided fusible batting. Now there's lots of different battings out there to use with your jelly rolls to do the rugs, the floor rugs and everything. I personally find that the Hobbs Heirloom double-sided fusible gives me the best results. It doesn't stretch like a lot of them do. It sits beautifully. I don't have to pin. I don't have to do any of those fussy things. Just use this. And out of one roll, you'll get your tree. So here we have our 2.5-inch wide strips cut. But before we go on to showing you how we do this, in with your decorative Christmas tree, we do give you the two gorgeous little ornaments to hang onto your tree. And you can make little ties to hang these on. You can do all sorts of things on this tree. And I decided to do this tree for myself because, you know, just find the old Christmas tree that's getting very, very old and pull it out and dust it down and clean it up and the mess it makes. I decided I'm just going to have my jelly roll tree on the wall. I'll have a table underneath and that's where all the gifts will sit. So it's just another alternative to having a real tree or one of the fake trees. It's up to you. But in hand with getting the two decorations in the tree, you can buy an additional pack. This pack here has lots of other decorations in it. So we make all of these here at Pauline's Quilters World, and you can, got a little knob at the top that you can tie something onto that to hang off the tree. So that's just another additional pack that you can buy to add to your tree. Now, to get started, as I said, we've got our 2.5-inch wide strips. We've got our batting. This is just the remainder of the roll that I've got left. I'm going to lay this on top, and the batting is cut 2.25. So if you're going to cut your own strips, don't cut them as wide as your fabric, just a little bit narrower. Put the batting down onto the ironing surface. Now this applies if you're using the Hobbs double-sided fusible. If you're using any other batting, you'll have to pin it in or glue it or something like that. But we're just going to now press this. Just go along and press. Now the batting doesn't stick to your ironing surface, so don't worry about getting it in a mess. It's not going to stick. So we just go along and iron this all the way through. So this is a full width of fabric that I'm using. And it takes a few minutes to iron it up, but once it's done, you know you're not going to get any movement. You don't need a walking foot. You don't get the stretching, as I said before. It just makes it very, very easy. So there we go. I'll just cut this off here. But if I was using another piece, I'd just keep ironing them and I'd come back through and cut them off later. So now what we're going to do is fold the sides in and until they meet, and then we're going to press the first little bit just to get it all even and neat. And then we're going to use the jelly roll sasher. Now this is the tool I've designed for doing the jelly roll rugs. Now I designed this because I found a lot of people were having trouble at their sewing machine with the stitching of this, because once we fold this once, we've got to fold it over again when we're at the machine, and we're going to stitch in 1/4 inch from this edge. But without the jelly roll tool, it meant that we had to do lots of folding and pressing, lots of pinning or clipping, which took a long, long time. So by putting it into the tool, you're just going to put it in and over. Then I pin it into the ironing surface, and I'm going to press about 6 inches only. So we'll just press along. We don't need to press it all, just a little bit to get us started. So there's the start done. Now I'm going to go to my sewing machine, and I put a 1/4 inch foot on the machine, and I like to use the 1/4 inch foot that has the little guide coming down the side. Put that on, fold this over, put this under the foot of the machine, put your needle down so that and your foot down so the needle's anchoring that. Then while you're doing that, I'm just going to pin it so that you could imagine that was my needle of my machine. Now we fold this over and over, and then we pull this down. Now that's going to fold it for us, and we're going to roll this over, and we're going to stitch in 1/4 inch all the way through. All the way through. When we get down here, we'll pretend we've been sewing. When we get down close to the tool, just pull this up a bit. We fold this over again. Make sure your needle's down every time you stop. You pull this again, and that will continue to fold and hold that in position while you sew. And that's what makes it so terribly easy for you to get a really neat, accurate jelly roll rug or the wonderful tree. So now, once we get that done, we'll talk about constructing the tree. So what we're going to do, we've got a whole heap, I call them strings. We've got all these strings made up now, and you can see we've got a variety of colour. So if we come over to the tree, you can see how we've mixed the colours up. So, and you can see how the tree's much wider at the bottom, and then it comes in and comes out again. So you don't need all your lengths exactly the same. And it's a good idea, and we do explain it all in the pattern, to trace your pattern out onto paper so you've got a full tree. Then you'll know how long you need or how wide you need your lengths to be. So we would have our pattern out on the table. Just clear a bit of a space. Then we're just going to lay our strips out, and we're putting the folded edge. The folded edge is going against the open edge. This is just a little opening where we stitch. So we'll put these down. We'll lay them out till you get a nice colour combination as you want. And just play with your colours. And once you get the first section done, so we'll come back to the tree. So once we get our first section done, up to about where it dips in here, set your machine up with, say, a green thread or a matching thread, whatever colour fabrics you're going to use. Match your threads, have the bobbin and the top thread the same. Set your machine up to a zigzag. Don't have the zigzag too opened. You need the zigzag so that it's going to skip from one strip to the next and take a nice bite. You don't want it coming in too wide, but you want to definitely connect these two together. I find the best foot to use here when I'm doing this is an edge stitching foot or a stitch in the ditch foot, which you can buy for every brand of machine. Just go to your dealer and ask them for an edge stitching foot or a stitch in the ditch foot. It has a little guide that comes down through the middle of the foot, and the guide will sit in this gap. And then that will give you an even zigzag on either side. It makes it really nice for you to be able to do a nice close zigzag. Now, when you put this down and you're stitching it, please don't stretch it, because your batting is a natural thing that will stretch. So you don't want to put too much stretch on this as you're sewing. Make sure you've got plenty of room out to the side of your machine, so as your tree gets bigger, you've got support for it. But all you're going to do is just go and zigzag all of these pieces together, but use that stitch in the ditch foot, and it'll make it so much neater and easier for you. Now use a really good quality needle. I suggest using the titanium top stitch needles. Now they've got a big eye so the thread will run through them nicely and won't split. You may want to use a bit stronger thread. Don't use a fine thread. Use a good quality thread. And the titanium needle has a really sharp point, so it penetrates right through the fabrics. Now, I do know some people have trouble going through this thickness. So it depends on your machine. You may need to use a walking foot. That depends on your machine. On my machine, I just use a regular stitch in the ditch foot. I have a titanium needle on, and my machine penetrates through these thicknesses beautifully. But it all depends on your machine. You may have to fiddle around with your tensions a little bit. That's something I can't advise you without knowing what your machine is. So keep stitching. Once you get that first section done, you can see you're going to start to use narrower strips. So you may be able to cut your strips in half or just lay them down so they meet on one side to the pattern. And then you can trim off this other edge if it lays outside the pattern. Then you may be able to use that other section there as you work up the tree. But you're just going to keep working up till you get the whole tree done. Then put your pattern on top of it, trace around it, and then stitch on the line that you've drawn, and then cut it out. So once you've got the tree cut out, that's it constructed. Then you'll bind it just like a regular binding as you do on your normal quilt, and we've used the regular sashing tool to do that. Then we've put little bells on. You could put buttons, you could put anything there, you could put little decorations, and then we've made the tiny little 1/8 of an inch bias strips to put through the top of this little decoration, just so we could hang them on there. You might want to use string or ribbon or something like that. But if you want to make up the nice little strips, I'll just show you how we do that, because it's very easy to make tiny little ties. Now we're going to use the 1/4 inch sasher tool and the 1/8 of an inch sasher tool. Now it's great to learn how to use these because the 1/8 makes absolutely fantastic stems when you're doing applique. And it's about the only tool on the market that I've been able to find that will make perfect 1/8 of an inch stems. So we're going to start out with a 1/2 inch strip of fabric. Now you can do this on the bias or the straight grain, depending what you need to do with it. But we're just going to fold it in and in till it meets. Then press the start of that with your hot iron. Fold it down so the folded edge is actually facing down to your ironing surface. We'll put it into the 1/4 inch tool to start with. We'll come up and come back down. We're going to pin into the ironing surface. Now I'm just going to turn this board around so that you're going to be able to see what I'm doing. Hold the fabric ahead of yourself. Now you don't want to stretch the fabric, so don't put tension on it, just hold it so it stays straight. Put the side of the iron into the side of the tool and you just push with the iron. And that will make a perfect 1/4 inch strip for you, whether it's on the bias or whether it's on the straight grain. Reposition your pin. Let's get the pin out. Reposition that. And then just keep pushing till you get the whole strip done. So there's our 1/4 inch. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to now, just going to trim this end off. And I'm going to now fold this in half again, over and over. It's just a bit fiddly here. And we'll press that start. Now we're going to put it into the 1/8 of an inch tool. So we'll go up. The hardest part is actually getting it in here. Now this is why I always use an awl. These are a great, great tool to use for doing things like this. Come back down. Now we're going to pin that into the ironing surface. We're going to use the double fork pin so that we get equal tension on this little strip of fabric. Close the pin in so it anchors it down beautifully. Now we just fold ahead of ourselves, hold it nice and firmly, and we just push with the iron. Just fold it over and push with the iron. And that will give you that beautiful 1/8 of an inch tie that you need to tie your decorations onto the tree. It's very, very simple technique, and you've got a beautiful, beautiful thin strip. So that's how we do our 1/8 of an inch ties, or how you do bias for your needle turn applique. So it's a very, very simple process. Like, this is such a quick thing to make up. Now the star at the top, I just did those strips a little bit narrower. I used 1.5 inch wide strips. I cut the batting in half, so I just cut this batting in half. And then I used the honey bun tool. This is a tool for doing the 1.5 inch wide strips. Now, why we designed the sasha, the jelly roll sasha, like a lot of people say to me, well, why can't I use my regular yellow ones to do all of my jelly roll rugs? You can't use these because of the bulk we're putting through it with the batting, and then we're folding it in half. We needed this to be much wider. So that's why we've designed the blue one for the jelly rolls, and we've designed the red one for the honey buns. Honey buns are 1.5 inch wide strip, jelly rolls are a 2.5 inch wide strip. So owning both of those tools, you can do lots and lots of different things with it. So remember, the yellow ones are for fabric only. The ones with the wider splits are for doing strips with batting. So we hope you really have fun, but you know, have fun with your Christmas tree. You can make it much larger if you want to. You know, there's no reason to make it as small as what we have it in the pattern. That size just fits where I need to put it in my home, getting ready for Christmas. And it is starting to be that time, but any time through the year you can get ready for Christmas. So we've hoped you enjoyed this little video on how to make your decorative Christmas tree with a jelly roll and how to decorate it. You know, like you might want to put little, you might like to make these little tiny bias strips. You might like to plait some together and put them across the tree that you could hang Christmas cards on. You might like to write little gift cards on there with little messages for your family. You might like to embroider your family's name on there, and as you get a new member of the family, add it to the tree. There's so many different things you can do, but if you put a little table underneath it, there you're ready to put all your Christmas gifts on for Christmas morning. So enjoy, stay safe, stay creative, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.